Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through this massive 12-game slate on Thanksgiving Eve. Mike, you've been doing the Thanksgiving Eve errands. How
Mhm.
are you on this fine Wednesday?
Doing great. Yeah, got a fresh cut this morning. Got a
Nice.
Costco trip. Got a quick little hike in. Couple other things I had to do. Woke up at 6 and I sat down probably about 45 minutes ago to get this rundown together. And it's a lot. It's not surprising. We'll see if we get like the holiday out of nowhere rest
Yeah,
sometimes, especially for maybe teams who are on the road. But yeah, it should be a good one. A lot to talk about today.
there is a lot to talk about. And one of the things that's been frustrating of late is it almost feels like we've gotten into a little bit of the return of health and safety protocol season from last year, where
Mhm.
players midday were going from out to questionable, back to out, back to questionable. And it just the number of times it feels like you're redoing things and moving things around has been really frustrating. I know that's happened with San Antonio a bunch. That's happened with Denver last night. It's happened with Miami already today, thankfully, like well in advance of the games. But Struess went from out yesterday to questionable yesterday to out again today. And so the hokey pokey has been the frustrating thing. But, we're managing it well. Had another nice night of props last night, 7-1. We are up 53 units so far this season. Somebody noted in the subscriber Discord that at this point last season we were up 50 units. So
Nice.
incredible consistency from the team. Really proud of it. Hopefully we will continue that success tonight. Although I've tapped the glass on the gods by posting on Twitter, so
We're
uh,
good.
we're we're working
Hopefully.
we're working against the wind.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk to my family and my girlfriend's family about just winning at gambling and just that's I'm really pumped about. Like the money's great and all, but bragging to your family about winning money is like way better.
Yeah, especially since we can't be talking about crypto this time of the year.
Yeah.
All right. At the Dynasty, wanting to make sure that we will continue to update those projections. We got it. We're on it at the Dynasty. We got you.
Always at it.
Uh, let's get into this slate. 12 games, lots to talk about. Let's start with Miami, where Max Strus is out. Jimmy Butler is out. Tyler Hero is questionable. Dwayne Dedman is questionable. And Bam Adebayo and Haywood Highsmith are probable. What are we going to see from the Miami Heat tonight?
Well, we're gonna see a lot of Kyle Lowry. That's for sure. Spoelstra said Lowry said he'll play 48 minutes if they ask him to. Obviously, off tomorrow. That typically helps things. So we've seen Lowry just go nuts. Rematch. Last time he played this team, they went. He had the 34 potential assist game. So that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I'm definitely expecting a lot of him. Caleb Martin should be good. Bam should be good from the knee injury. I don't think Hero's going to play. Last time Spolstra said he's not quite there yet, and they listed him as out. They're back in Miami today after their road trip, so I think like they're listing him as questionable. Like, oh, he's actually available, and maybe we can
Right.
suit him up. So I'd lean a little bit out on him. I'd lean a little bit out on Gabe Vincent, who had his knee swell up after shoot around. That's still concerning. Getting ruled out before warmups is usually never a good sign. That's happened the last two games, so I think he's a little bit unlikely. Yeah, obviously no Jimmy, so we should see pretty close to the same group minus Struess. So no Duncan as well. So it could be pretty tight, and I'd be curious to see if they'd play Hero. If he's like almost there, I would lean probably not. They'll probably just play more Jamal Kane, and yeah, like I said, could be just a stupid amount of Kyle Lowry, and Bam played pretty well in the last game too.
Yeah, and on the other side, across from them, the Wizards are dealing with plenty on their injury report as well. Bradley Beal, Rui Hachimura, and Monty Morris are all questionable. We saw Monty Morris miss the last game. What are your reads on Washington today?
Yeah, so it's sad to see Bradley Beal was only a partial shoot around guy, and Wes Unseld said after the game he was getting further evaluated after taking a knee to his thigh. Didn't look great, was in some pain. Beal misses time, somewhat often these days, so I don't feel good about that, which sucks, man, because this is such a great spot for him. With the way Miami's running zone, you really want like a star player who can carry the load and produce offense. It would have been like a really good Beal spot against a team that gives up a lot of threes. So he may be limited or out. If he's out, and Monte Morris, they signed Dotson to a deal. It's not a great sign that they would do that. Obviously, a little bit different now that they got Goodwin back, so we could see a decent amount of Goodwin they probably, if they're all out, they almost have to start him. He doesn't really do a lot of ball handling, so they might just start Will Barton, who they've talked about before being a ball handler, hasn't really come to fruition because he's been so bad. So yeah, we saw Johnny Davis get minutes. Wouldn't be surprised if Dotson is in the rotation if they're like completely gutted. So it's just, this game is just completely gross. We'll see some more Kyle Kuzma stuff. Good matchup. Miami gives a lot of 3-pointers. I think he's second in the NBA in spot up plays per game. So he's a guy who could benefit. Denny Abdia as well. He's been kind of a pseudo point guard at times. It could be just a all hands on deck situation. We've seen them play Taj Gibson when they're really shorthanded, and they play kind of their power forwards as more of like threes, meaning like Rui Hachimura, who's also questionable. It's just, this game's just completely bananas. And so, yeah, it's just basically like I just gave it up on talking about it in matchups. It's like, just trust the projections. We'll be all over it. You got the killer math. We got the team getting the minutes that we think will be really good. So it's just so many iterations to go through on this.
Yeah, one thing I would note is we saw last game when Miami was really shorthanded. You mentioned that zone, and really the way the Timberwolves attacked it, right, was a lot of getting the ball to Karl Anthony Towns in kind of the middle of the zone and letting him go to work as a distributor as well. Cat flirted with a triple double in that game. I could see Washington choosing to attack similarly with Kuzma being that guy, kind of in the middle of the zone, distributing and getting Porzingis down in the dunker spot. They could also just use Porzingis in the middle of the zone and just like shoot over everybody essentially. But some different iterations in the offense that might make it so that if they are short ball handlers, it's not the worst spot to be short ball handlers against a team that plays a lot of zone, because you got to beat zones with passing anyway, as opposed to like beating them off the dribble as much.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into.
I think Porzingis against the zone too. We've seen him have that little one dribble pull up shoot over people game. That's pretty effective against the zone too. Rudy Gobert, not effective against the zone, as we found out.
Yeah, sadly. People in chat asking if I am hungover. Confirmed, I am hungover. I am. I'm doing the best I can today. Moving a little bit slower than normal. 7 beers in an hour and a half will do that to a 40-year-old man these days. All right, on to the Q tags. Jason Tatum, questionable with an ankle. Your guy tonight. What are your thoughts on his availability?
Yeah, legit rolled it. Was trying to block DeMar DeRozan's shot at the top of the key. Could see him clearly roll his ankle. Did play through it. This is a pretty common theme we've seen this year, where guys tweak their ankles and miss time when I think they weren't going to. Paolo Banchero, Exhibit A, Drew Holiday, Exhibit B. They looked, to less. They looked better than Jason Tatum's ankle. So we'll see. Tatum doesn't miss games. He's had ankle injuries before, so probably going to be game time. If he doesn't start, I think they would go to Derek White. We know they like Sam Hauser, who's been incredible, but adding Derek White, another on-ball defender, to throw at Luka, I think that makes a lot of sense. They're certainly comfortable playing White big minutes, and just adding more length. More quickness and just ball pressure, I think is the way you'd want to go in this matchup. So that'd probably be how they would go if Tatum's out. And yeah, like I said, I don't have a great read on it because he's just a freaking superhuman.
Yeah. Wanted to just shout out some of the positivity in chat, which is awesome to see. Matt Preston noting gratitude, grateful for these two. Thanks, team. Really appreciate you guys out there. I had a tweet thread earlier today on gratitude. I think it's a really important piece of everybody's life to embrace. So appreciate the sentiments there. And then Matt M noting that we should feel proud about the prop stuff, that he's been in the industry a while and we're the real deal. I really appreciate that. Especially we've had some negativity in the Discord from some professional bettors who, have all sorts of different interests than our own in terms of serving customers. So really appreciate people that have been in the industry a while having a lot of positive feedback as well. All right, continuing on the questionable tags. Toronto, there's never a shortage of questionable tags when it comes to Toronto. Scotty Barnes, Delano Banton are questionable. They're without Otto Porter Jr., Pascal Siakam, and Precious Achiuwa. What's your read on Toronto tonight?
Yeah, it sounds like Banton could miss from what Nick Nurse was saying. He's been great, and Scotty, don't have a read on it. We saw him tweak his ankle and get dinged up, listed with a knee injury, so dealing with two things. I think he could sit. Gary Trent Jr. also back from an illness. He should be good to go, went through practice. Same with Chris Boucher. Should note that Nick Nurse said yesterday that he thinks that Boucher is really good in that bench role, which is a little unfortunate because you would love to see Chris Boucher against this Nets team that cannot rebound for crap. So I do think he can make an impact off the bench, but expecting Thad to start regardless with Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, OG regardless, and then Scotty if he can go. If he can't go, I honestly think it wouldn't be crazy to start Malachi Flynn. Nurse called him, quote, the X factor. I think you're going to put OG on Durant anyways. That way you can kind of build your rotation to have him match those minutes and fill like your power forward minutes there, subbing him out and still filling in with Boucher, Koloko, and impacting the game that way. But that first unit when you're matching up with Durant, I think that makes a lot of sense. OG has been freaking absurd. I did some research on the guys who he's gone up against in matchups just to share some stuff. So his matchups, the only guy who scored more than 21 on him is Durant. Jimmy Butler, only 21. James Harden, 14.5 points per game. DeJounte, 18.5 per game and 2. SGA, only 20 points per game. He's just been taking away star players. He's been, man, this defensive player of the year buzz has got to be legit, not Precious. So yeah, just wanted to shout out OG, who's been incredible, not into Kevin Durant today. Yeah, I would expect, like I said, those bigs off the bench. I would expect a good bit of Malachi Flynn, who pressured the ball in Atlanta. I thought his defense was a lot better, so I expect him to pick up a big chunk. Like I said, Nurse seems to finally like him after a really rocky start to his career, and that's assuming no Banton, no Barnes. He would be off the table if either one of those guys are in.
The other thing that might work in his favor in that scenario is obviously you mentioned the defensive responsibilities for OG. There'd be significant defensive responsibilities for Fred VanVleet against Kyrie Irving as well. And so having somebody else out there who can bring the ball up and sort of initiate and take that responsibility off of Fred's plate would be really helpful. You see that they do that often, right? With Scotty Barnes, even OG will bring it up sometimes, but basically to keep that off of Fred's plate. And so in those situations, Malachi Flynn, if Banton and Barnes were unavailable, would be the only other piece on the roster that would really fit that role. So I could see that as well. Also, to note on the questionable tag, Spencer Dinwiddie is questionable with a shoulder injury, and Maxi Kleber is still listed as doubtful. They're playing Boston tonight, so we've got another one of these games where, gosh, I would be super excited to watch a fully healthy Dallas team play a fully healthy Boston team, but we've got Dinwiddie and we've got Tatum questionable on the injury report. What are your thoughts on Dinwiddie's availability tonight?
Yeah, not too sure. I didn't see when this one happened. Saw some notes, but yeah, probably going to be game time. Definitely could sit this one out. I saw him kind of stretching it at the end of the game. He had a fall or something, but yeah, probably going to be game time. Nothing really suggests that he's going to be out here. I'm trying to think of the Dallas questionable tags. They've been, generally pretty average, I guess you would say, where, some teams, if they're questionables, they're in and so on. So I think he's got a pretty good chance to play. If he doesn't play, that presents an opportunity for Tim Hardaway Jr., right? You'd want more offense. You've got your two defensive guys. You want as much shooting as you can against his defense. Not a great matchup for him. Boston's really good at taking away a three-pointer. We saw Tim Hardaway Jr. when called upon, which has been really just one game against Houston when he went ham. He has stepped up to the task. And as I said, if they're not going to have Tatum, they add more ball pressure. I think they're going to need him to carry a really big offensive load. So they might. I don't think they need to go to Josh Green. We saw Josh Green start and kind of film, and they were without Bullock. He's been basically like Reggie Bullock's understudy. But yeah, then you would also add, just dump the ball into Christian Wood in the non-Luka minutes. He could really pile up some points. We've seen that the Boston defense at times has been vulnerable to front court scoring. So Christian Wood, very kind of weird to see, a shooting guard, secondary ball handler could really affect Christian Wood, but I do think it would really add to his ceiling because they would just need somebody to step up, really, even in the first unit too. And I mean, Is it crazy that they would just start Wood? Run basically Bullock at the 2, Dorian at 3. That way you match him up with Tatum. If Tatum goes, you got Grant. Wood doesn't need to defend there. That kind of makes sense too, actually, if Spencer's out.
Yeah, I think the challenge is you have to stagger those two so heavily with Luka and Wood, because otherwise, if you play lineups without either one of them, they have no chance to score. So I don't know, with Jason Kidd and his propensity to limit Christian Wood, I would probably bet against it if I had to.
Me too. Just a thought that popped in my head that was fun.
Yep. On the Indy side, Andrew Nembhard and Isaiah Jackson, both questionable for Indiana tonight. Any leans on them?
Nembhard was hurt a couple games ago and played through it at first, did not play in the last game. And I kind of think Aaron Nesmith has Wally pipped him anyways. We've seen this defense, and I mentioned it on my space last night and in our Slack. The Pacers have the number 1 half-court defense in November. Get the hell out of here. They've been unbelievably good. They've been pressuring the ball with Nembhard, with Nesmith. Halliburton's been better on defense after he was a guy we were always attacking last year. So obviously Miles Turner's paint protection has been A+, but I think Neesmith starts regardless. They're going up against the Wolves. I think you'd rather have that stronger wing defender to throw on Ant. Um, we saw them do that with Franz Wagner, and it was pretty successful as they, pretty much figured out the Magic's defensive scheme and scored all over them. But yeah, I would expect Neesmith to start regardless. Don't have a great read on Isaiah Jackson. We saw him tweak it. They would probably bring Goga Bitadze and basically fill in his minutes. Maybe change the sub patterns, not bring out Jalen Smith as early. Maybe run him a little bit deeper. So he would be a guy that would benefit just a teensy bit. Obviously, Miles would benefit just a little bit more as well. And Brissett, we know they like Brissett to fill power forward minutes too, so he'd be a guy that would also step up. But yeah, Neesmith and Buddy Hield, man, this is a really good matchup for them. We know that the Wolves give up the most wide open 3-pointers in the game. They're going to have Jaden McDaniels. We just took it under on Tyrese Halliburton because the numbers loved it, which you're the best at. And I just added some color to it, saying that McDaniels is a fantastic defensive cover. That'll give a lot of length and make life really tough on Halliburton with the drop coverage behind with Gobert that they're going to run with those Halliburton minutes too. So yeah, I'd really like that bet for us.
One note that that one name that you didn't mention when talking about who could potentially benefit is TJ McConnell, who got up to 32 minutes last game in the absence of Nembhard. Neesmith played 31. But part of this was blowout, right? He got extended in blowout. Halliburton ended up only playing 27. But it was interesting to me that they were so comfortable playing McConnell and Halliburton together, two players that you would think would be harder to pair together. But what they got a ton of dribble penetration off those guys, and they got Orlando's length having to move around the perimeter. And Orlando's, if you're gonna dribble into the paint against Orlando and try to shoot, you're gonna deal with all their length. But if you're gonna do that and move the ball around the perimeter, now you've got their bigger bodies that have all this length kind of off balanced, and it worked really effectively for Indiana last game. Do you think TJ McConnell would have a chance to get into those mid or upper 20s again if Nembhard was out?
So I thought when you went to that, I thought you were going to talk about Benny Mathurin because I'm actually pretty excited about him today. Like I mentioned, the Minnesota defense, I think you really want a guy who could attack. And we saw in the preseason, this dude could attack like crazy. So I think this could be a Benny Mathurin game, my guy. But yeah, as you mentioned, McConnell really ate into Jalen Smith. Shout out to us. We had an under on him that was, thank you, TJ. Because they just went, like you said, they went small, all that stuff you said. So I think he ran a little pure, and I think there's a chance Nembhard plays as well. It was like he was playing through it. I think they wanted to get him back, but thank you for bringing it up. And yeah, you always, I always go too far in the weeds sometimes, and I'm grateful for you always covering the bases. I love it.
No, McConnell was the guy that popped last game and figured we should tackle it. Onto the Bulls. Goran Dragic is downgraded to questionable. They did get Kobe White back earlier this week, so they have a little bit more guard depth there. I would always say that Dragic, who's not too far off my age at this point in his career, any downgrade to questionable is probably a bad sign. But what are your thoughts on Goran's availability tonight?
Yeah, I think he has to sit, which obviously affects him, affects Kobe White. He didn't have a big stat line. He's been kind of quiet, but Donovan liked what he saw. So I would expect him to pick up a big chunk of those minutes, a little bit more room for Alex Caruso. We saw his minutes get elevated because Goran Dragic had that stinger that, like we said, it's going to probably keep him out. One thing that I'd want to see here, and you may notice as well, that Derrick Jones Jr. got booted. So just a quick side note, we saw Derrick Jones Jr. leapfrog Javonte Green and take all those minutes in the first half over the week, or was it Saturday or Friday? And then Javonte Green was the guy who took Levine's minutes in the second half when Levine couldn't make anything. So that's flipped. Derrick Jones Jr. very much tied to Dragic. Billy Donovan is sold on those two playing together. So I would expect more minutes out of Javonte Green, which sounds, again, kind of weird, but Donovan loves those two together, and DJJ and Dragic. But Kobe White definitely benefits. Caruso benefits. And to a lesser degree, Patrick Williams, right? Because we see Caruso sub in as almost a four-man functionally and who he guards with a lot of 3s and 4s. So he also benefits a little bit. Certainly pretty thin against the Bucks, who are taking away 3-pointers like crazy this year. So these secondary scorers have really been clamped on by the foundation of this Bucks defense. So yeah, real thin. Yeah.
All right, let's get into Denver, where Bones Highland is out, and then you got all the questionable tags. Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Ish Smith, all listed questionable, some iteration of conditioning after the back-to-back. embarrassing, disappointing loss last night when you got Jamal and Jokic back, and they lose at home to a Detroit team that, gosh, that was just a really, really bad loss for Denver, and one that is tilting me as someone who holds their overs this year. What are your thoughts on the availability for the Nuggets main guys tonight?
Yeah, they didn't sound too concerned. Aaron Gordon, I listened to all their pressers to try to get a beat on it. And yeah, Gordon talked about rhythm. He didn't really talk about being tired. Jokic, great quote. Did the Nuggets send him a Peloton while he was out for protocols, and he had to sign up for the account, and now he wants to get a Peloton? Just like, oh man, wouldn't you love to see Jokic Peloton commercial? That would like.
I mean, I would love any Jokic content. Just any. I eat it all up.
Yeah, if I work at Peloton marketing, I'm like on that today. But I digress. So I expect Jokic, Murray, and Gordon to play. I'm unsure on MPJ. I don't know what happened, but back-to-back being listed with a new injury is something I don't feel comfortable with MPJ. So we see if they go a little bit bigger. I think that the most likely answer is they play Bruce Brown, on-ball defender. They did put KCP on him in the last game, and KCP got torched. But everyone gets torched by SGA. So I would expect Bruce Brown to start. If MPJ doesn't go, I think they're fine giving up the spacing. Obviously, no Bones. Ish Smith did get elevated to questionable. He could be coming back for more minutes here, so he could fill those minutes. If they're both out, then maybe they are going to – I think they would still run Bruce Brown, big minutes, start him, and then stagger him as the backup point guard too. So, yeah, man, this is a messy slate here. It's just, like the injuries are just so condensed on certain teams today. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, and this would be a kind of a tough matchup for Michael Porter Jr. regardless, even if he is healthy, to stay out there just because of what you alluded to with Bruce Brown and having that secondary on-ball defender to deal with SGA on switches and whatnot. Otherwise, MPJ is just going to get totally attacked and isolated. So even if MPJ is able to go tonight, I'd temper expectations. On the other side of this game, Alexander Pokusevski is questionable as well. Lindy Waters, Jay Will, Jiang, and Moose Mescal all listed out. So a lot of size issues for Oklahoma City going into this game against Nikola Jokic, potentially. We'll see. What are your thoughts on Poku's availability? And then just talk through a little bit how this center rotation or front court rotation, what's left for OKC tonight?
So one thing to note on OKC questionable tags, they're basically probables. Mark Dagnall has said that they're going to list guys as questionable regardless. Almost, we've seen all the time they get these midday questionable tag upgrades. It's a little bit different, but feel pretty confident that Pokusevski is going to play. Do they trust Poku against Jokic? Probably not, right? So I think they would maybe bring him off the bench. They used JRE in the matchup in the last game, so I would expect the starting lineup to be JRE at the center spot, obviously SGA, Giddey, Dort, and I think Jalen Williams. You certainly don't need the size against the Nuggets perimeter guys, so I would expect Jalen Williams, who's found minutes regardless. That's J-Dub, the good one, the Santa Clara one. Just one of these days we're gonna stop doing that every time. But yeah, I would expect that to be the starting lineup. I would expect a little bit of a minutes cap on Poku. Not like he's been kind of capped naturally just based on the environment he's in. But Baisley's back. Baisley played pretty well. Baisley played like on-ball defense. They used him really in a unique way in the last game. It's tough to really figure this out. But I think that's the starting lineup, as I said, with Baisley, Kenrich Williams, kind of helping the second unit with some ball handling a little bit. We've seen Trey Mann's minutes get cut hard as they kind of like Jalen Williams is kind of pushed over Trey Mann. He's a better player, obviously, but yeah. But the headline is Pokusevski's probably not a great play today, even though he is returning.
And we've seen in the past, I mean, against someone like if Jokic is able to play, we've seen them use Moose as like a big body. They don't have him available tonight. So like, I mean, is this a situation where like Jeremiah Robinson Earl could end up playing a lot if Poku is somewhat limited? Like they just don't have a lot of big bodies.
Yeah, I guess. I don't think they want to play Jerry. They don't really believe in him all that much. Just hasn't played enough minutes. They threw him at Al Horford for like all of Al Horford's minutes, and he fared pretty well. So they're willing to try it, and I think that they would do it at least a little bit. So I think Jerry's
Yeah.
ceiling is probably like 28 if everything's going really well.
Okay. All right, on to the Spurs where Jakob Poeltl is questionable once again. Josh Richardson doubtful and Zach Collins probable. So it looks like even if Poeltl is unable to go, there will be some infusion of front court depth for the Spurs tonight. What are your thoughts on Poeltl's availability?
Pretty good. Back to back, missed the last game, played the front end of it. So I think he's probably okay. Listed with the same injury. I think it was more of a maintenance thing. Spurs are being pretty cautious with a lot of their injury tags. You mentioned the hokey pokey over the weekend as well, so it's something to monitor.
Twice it happened with them. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what to make of it at this point.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, so hopefully we get some clarity on the situation. But I would expect him to start. Charles Bassey behind him. Gorgie Jung would go away. Yeah, I think Bassey's done enough to get a shot here over Zach Collins. You're not going there either way, but that's something to watch because he's played pretty well in that role. But
They did
you're not
start.
going there.
They did start Gorgie last time,
Mhm.
so I don't know if that would still be like. I don't know if they just view Bassey as like he's just going to be the backup center, regardless of
Mhm.
what the situation is.
Well, right. What I'm saying, like, is Zach Collins going to be the new backup center?
Yeah, yeah.
If
It's a good question. It's a good
yeah,
question. It's probably I don't know. It's a really good question because I think they've
I
liked
think
what
they
they've
want to
gotten
shoot
from
threes though.
HCF as well.
Yeah, they like 3-point shooting. So I think that they would probably, if Collins is ready to go and he checks all the boxes, maybe they put him out there. But you're
Yeah.
not going there. Just something that we'll be watching for the
Yeah.
and rotation nerd Twitter.
Yeah. All right. Doubtfuls and outs. Clippers, no Kawhi or Paul George tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a lot of time talking through this one in Slack, looking at potential bets on the Clippers side. And they're going into Golden State. They're 8.5, 9-point underdogs here. So there's some risk for the Clips. What do you think? How do you think they handle a starting lineup without Kawhi and Paul George?
Yeah, so a bit of a hot take from me. I think they start double point guard. We've seen John Wall sub in pretty early for Kawhi, and we've seen them both start. I think they're going to lean into offense. Ty Lue has said they really want to lean into 1-5 pick and roll as the foundation of their offense, and they want to play a little bit faster. John Wall does that, so I think that makes sense to me. So I think the starting lineup is going to be Reggie Jackson, John Wall, Terrence Mann, Marcus Morris, and Ivica Zubac. Certainly see more Amir Coffey. We'll see if Robert Covington, who's been out of the rotation, comes out. Norm Powell is, I think, locked into the 6-man role. Ty Lue said multiple times that he has really fit in very well, coming off basically back-to-back season high-scoring games. He's been playing very, very well. RIP Cash Game Gary. But yeah, we'll see if Zubac's minutes have been really strong. He's been, way bigger part of the off. He's been like the anti-Gobert because he's been screen setting a ton, and just that's their initial action on their offense quite a bit. So Zoo's role should be pretty good, but it's the Warriors. I actually bet them -8.5. Definitely some downside. We know when the Clippers, when it goes bad, Ty Lue will just throw everything out the window. So major downside. It's a big slate, so you probably don't need to lean into that uncertainty. But we could see mad scientist Ty Lue here. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of John Wall. I'm curious to see what his price is because he was priced up last time.
Yeah, I think most people are going to assume that Norm Powell is the one who benefits
Mm-hmm.
most immediately, right? A wing player that can handle some of that scoring load. But I'm kind of leaning with you that I think they might go the double point guard situation here and lean that way. The good news, if you're hoping for a competitive game here, is the Warriors' second unit has been very, very vulnerable, and the Clippers, even without Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, are still pretty deep. So they're a team that could potentially hang in there in the second unit, but yeah, missing all of Paul George's playmaking, and then Kawhi, another key usage player. There's a lot of usage available between John Wall, Reggie Jackson, Norm Powell, Zubats, those Marcus Morris, those guys to pick it up tonight. So certainly will be some potential DFS options. All right,
and I'll add really quick. I think the Wall. I think if I'm taking out the Galaxy brain factor, I think Amir Coffey is more likely to start than Norm is. I think Lue just really likes him in that role, and he's playing well in that role, and I don't think he wants to mess up that chemistry.
Yep. Okay. Kevin Love, thumb injury. He's been ruled out. We were surprised he played last game. Only played 12 minutes, so didn't play a ton. They will get Dean Wade back though, which is really big for their front court depth. Talk a little bit about how the Cavaliers line up tonight.
Yeah, I would expect to have the similar starting five. Bickerstaff said he wanted to kind of get a good sample with this Lamar Stevens lineup, which has played better after their little losing streak there. So expect him to start. You're essentially putting Dean Wade in those love minutes, taking away Robin Lopez a little bit, and then taking off that upside that we've seen on Jetty Osman the last few games. He's been playing exceptional. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a matchup that is exciting, which we can talk about either I guess pretty soon when we get to probables. But yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, Seth Curry and Yuta Watanabe out on the second night of a back-to-back here for Brooklyn. Uh, Disappointing loss for Brooklyn last night. Ben Simmons plays well in Philadelphia, and they lose to a Philadelphia team without Embiid, without Maxey, with Harris getting banged up mid-game. How does Brooklyn replace the absence of the shooting from Seth Curry and Yuta Watanabe tonight?
Yeah, shooting, right? So who do you want? And Joe Harris looked horrible yesterday. He was arguably their worst player. He was not trying hard on. He didn't look very good defensively. Quotes from Jacques Vaughn after the game saying that if you don't try hard, you're not going to play. Is that addressed to Kyrie Irving possibly? But Patty Mills played more than we thought yesterday. I think his role is pretty secure here as a floor spacer, secondary ball handler. Not going there. Curious to see if they bring back Edmund Sumner to fill minutes that way, or if they bring out Cam Thomas. I lean Thomas, but don't have a strong take. You're not going there either way. And yeah, they'll probably go with the starting lineup. I don't think that starting lineup was the problem. It was just when they got away from the starting lineup, things kind of got away from them overall. But yeah, I expect same starting lineup, a little bit more Harris, a little bit more Mills, maybe a little bit more Cam. And we saw Markieff Morris get an early sub and then just completely go away. So yeah, I think they'll probably play pretty small, which again, man, the Raptors frontcourt guys could really clean up here if the minutes can get up there.
For their opponent from last night, Philadelphia, Matisse Thybulle got hurt last night, so he's going to be out tonight. Tobias Harris not listed on the injury report, which is good news. They're still without Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. They started Montrezl Harrell last night, but Paul Reed ended up sort of stealing the show from a DFS perspective. Do you expect any lineup changes tonight for Philadelphia?
No, I think they're comfortable. Doc sounded pretty satisfied with it, despite how, like you said, it was really the Paul Reed minutes that were the difference. Paul Reed was freaking everywhere, man. B-ball Paul, very inconsistent, but when he's on, he looks freaking great. Really good matchup too, right? Like we love to hammer the Hornets with opposing centers. So I think the lineups will be the same. As you mentioned, Tobias, our king from last night, we thought he was dead, rolls his ankle, comes back and smashes for our double. Also hurt his hip last night too. He like had a little slip and he was grabbing his left hip. This is the hip that kept him out for a week. This is the hip that he hurt last year. So I was surprised not to see a Q tag. It's the Sixers though. So, we've got to be ready for possible Tobias Harris. And also worth mentioning, he got, really short rotation in the first half and then got a pretty long one in the second half. He was out there for a really good chunk of the fourth quarter until it got to garbage time. So again, Tobias, you're as Mark Dankenbrink said, we are not eating ramen at Thanksgiving. We're going to go full out on Thanksgiving thanks to Tobias.
Trey Murphy, not expected to play tonight. What are your thoughts on how the Pelicans handle his absence?
Yeah, so they went with shooting, right? They went with more Devontae Graham to fill that role. I think that's what they're going to do again. I don't think they really need to lean too much into size against the Spurs in the second unit. They run pretty small there, so I think Devontae Graham's going to be a guy that'll pick up some minutes. Maybe a little bit more Najee Harris, a little bit more Dyson Daniels and those guys. But pretty good spot for their offense. The Spurs are dead last in defense. I want to see 140 from the Pelicans tonight. I think they're going to put on a show. I almost made Zion my cover boy for matchups today.
Probables and returns. We should note the Warriors are back to full strength tonight after taking the rest game in New Orleans. So we should see all their starters play normal elevated minutes. Josh Hart is probable for Portland. Portland going on the road into Cleveland tonight. They're, kind of on the verge of blowout territory as well, with like almost a double-digit spread with no Damian Lillard. Josh Hart with that probable tag. We've actually seen his minutes have been, really elevated all season long and really consistent, but and part of this was when Dame was healthy, but like the last few games when Dame was healthy, it seemed like Josh Hart was starting to lose some minutes to Shaedon Sharpe when they'd play from behind late that they were comfortable with. So something to note, I just put the probable tag, wanted to put that on the radar. And then DeAndre Hunter probable as well after missing last game. Looks like he'll be back tonight for Atlanta. Any thoughts on those two?
Yeah, so I'm curious to see who the Blazers start. I mentioned this on my space and last night, and in my matchups. I mentioned it a lot. I think it's not crazy to start Justice Winslow and Shane Sharp's spot. It's a little bit discouraging to take a rookie out of a starting role. He's coming off kind of a bad game, but with the way they want to put Jeremy Grant on ball handlers, you kind of can't do that here, right? Like you've got Evan Mobley down there. I think you want more size. You don't want to put I don't think you want to put Simons on. They might just put Simons on him and make Hart guard him, or maybe just put Grant on him. But I think you make your defense function way better if you just start Winslow, throw him out on Mobley. But either way, I think Mobley's in a smash spot. Just to add that, but yeah, I think Shane Sharp's minutes could get cut quite a bit. Hart, mentioned dinged up with the ankle, been playing a bunch. They need him to play a good bit. It's a really tough matchup for him. So we're as people who are rooting against Hart today, we're rooting for hashtag our Cavs for a little bit of blowout.
And then DeAndre Hunter, his return should push AJ Griffin back to the bench, who was impressive in his spot start there for an undermanned Hawks team. Any thoughts on how Hunter's return could potentially impact things further?
No, that's pretty much it. Griffin goes back to the bench. They asked a lot out of Griffin defensively. That's really the main reason why he hasn't seen big minutes. And to see Nate McMillan use him a little bit more defensively didn't quite pick up too much of a matchup. We actually saw Trae Young pick up the Garland matchup, so they're still hiding him a little bit. But the fact that they're like, okay, we're going to put Trae Young on ball handlers, it just really shows how much trust they have in AJ Griffin right now, and he's earned it, man. He's playing. If you're doing like rookie of the week honors, he's got to be up there with it, with a game winner coming off a really strong game. Yeah, it's been he's pretty much said bye bye to Justin Holiday. It's holiday season except for everywhere in Atlanta.
That's right. All right. So before we get out of here, as a reminder, support the people who support us. This show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts running for money, in addition to many formats of NFL contests still running for big, huge cash prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers can use our tool to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at checkout at underdogfantasy.com. And also, if you'd like to support the work that we're doing, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel, getting notifications whenever we go live. Also consider, smashing, pushing, pressing, whatever you'd like to do to that like button that makes sure that the algorithm is circulated for us. Please do so. If you're uninterested in joining us for the premium content, this is what you need to do. Give us the clicks. We need the clicks. We'll be back behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern time today with myself and GPP bro Gary on the ones and twos talking about this 12-game slate. Enjoy the slate tonight. Get ready for Thanksgiving. Tomorrow's a big day of nom 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 nom. Take care, everybody.